Abby Glassenberg from Craft Industry Alliance, and we're here for our member spotlight. Today, we're going to be talking with Jocelyn Songco, who owns Yarn Farm Kingston, which is a super cool business. It is both a wine bar and a yarn shop in Kingston, New York. So I'm very excited to speak with Jocelyn shortly. Jocelyn, I see that you are here and you've requested to join. So let me just And I love this idea of combining sort of community and crafting all in one place. So I'm excited to hear more about it.
Hi,
Hey,
Abby.
Jocelyn, how are
I'm
you?
good. How are you?
I am good. I love the model of your business and I'm very excited to learn more about it. You are located in Kingston, New York, which is a place that a lot of people live there, but also a lot of people visit there. So it's kind of cool for people to hear about it because it's kind of a destination. So tell us a little bit about Kingston and tell us a little bit about your yarn shop and wine bar.
Sure. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to talk with you, Abby, and to see everyone joining
Yes.
on the screen. It's really exciting. So Kingston, New York is actually just across the Hudson River from Rhinebeck, which many people know because of the Sheep and Wool Festival.
Yeah.
I've been coming up to this area from New York City for probably 15 years, ever since I went to my first Sheep and Wool and decided it had to be an annual event. About 3 years ago, I got a house up here, and in the course of this year, I started doing the research and really thought about whether it was the right thing for me to do to open up a yarn shop and a wine bar right here in Kingston, where I have my home, and we decided to go for it. We being my boyfriend, Todd, who manages the wine bar, and myself. And I'm handling the yarn shop just on my own, plus my shop associate who works part-time, Natalie. And it has been 2 months. We opened in the beginning of November, as well as opening up just during the Sheep and Wool Festival for a pop-up in the front of the space, just for that weekend. So really happy to answer questions or tell you more about it.
That's super cool. And I think, obviously that region has become a destination for people who love yarn and people who love wool. So it makes a lot of sense. And it's like, you can add to your stay, have time to go somewhere else, meet up with friends. So I love that idea. I think the location is perfect. So I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your background. Since you did just open a retail store, what were you doing before this?
Sure. So for the last 14 years, I actually worked for a nonprofit, and I worked in the part of the foundation that made investments into small businesses. And these investments were intended to be, instead of using the foundation money for grants, so all of the companies that we invested in had to have some benefit to society, like creating jobs for low-income people or helping smallholder farmers. And I traveled a third of the time to mainly Africa and a little bit to Asia, and a good amount of travel to Europe as well. And one thing that's interesting is that when I was traveling for that job, I always, which people I guess would not be surprised about, I always sought out everything related to fiber and artisans and crafts. And that I think is reflected in a lot of what I've chosen to showcase here. I would also say it's not very different picking the yarns that you want to sell from picking companies that you want to invest in, because you want good partners, you want things that will delight and inspire and amaze other people, and where there's a demand for those things, so that as a retailer, if you choose to buy products, they will in turn be bought by the end consumer. And I guess the other thing to say is the wine bar component is really what I think from the past couple of years we've all been looking for, which is that connection, a real in-person connection to community. So I'm not opposed at all to online shopping, and I do a lot of it myself, but I think all of the different forms that people can tap to fuel their creativity are important. And so everything is complementary, whether you're getting a subscription box from someone online, or you're coming in person for that class, or just to knit together for knit night. So the wine bar facilitates that, because not only do we have wine, we also have local beer and tea, and it's just another refreshment that complements the crafting experience.
Absolutely. It's so nice to reconnect in person in that way. And I'm imagining when you were working for this nonprofit, it sounds like you saw maybe a lot of business plans or pitches of different businesses. I'm wondering if those, sort of reviewing so many of those for so long, helped you when you're sort of formulating your own business plan.
Absolutely. So I was inspired in creating this business, but it was highly analytical. So I put together a budget. I looked at my available funds. What were my savings? What size loan could I take on, which I did. I borrowed money in order to do this. And what did I imagine the cash flows would look like? So what would the revenues look like? When would I potentially start to break even? And that also points to why I thought the wine bar was an important component and complementary to the yarn shop. If you consider Kingston, New York, it's a fabulous destination. Everyone knows this area for the sheep and wool. It's also very popular, not only in the fall, but also in the spring and summer. And so I think knitters and crafters will hopefully come year round, as will sort of the neighborhood wine bar patrons. But also, if you think about when is knitting and crocheting and all of these crafts, like when does that really take prominence in non-hardcore crafters' lives? Well, it's sort of the like fall, winter months. And then when do people come to this area for tourism? Well, it's like probably the spring and the summer as well. So you have these two aspects of the business, which are complementary to each other.
Yeah, that's super cool. So how did you learn how to knit?
I love this experience and this story. Really, I had a girlfriend in Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps, is one thing to mention. I worked in Ethiopia for a couple of years. And so post Peace Corps, this group of girlfriends were very close. A few of us were traveling from New York City to New Jersey, to South Jersey by train. One of the group of women was a knitter who had picked it up in San Francisco. This was in the late 90s when knitting, I would say, had a resurgence. And so she taught me on a train. I remember distinctly I was using like metal straight point needles and acrylic, like this light blue acrylic. And the knit that I did had all these drop stitches and it was super tight, but everyone has their first shot at it and then you grow from there. So that was how I first knit. Then I think a year later, a different girlfriend took me to Rhinebeck for sheep and wool, and you see the fiber. And of course, for many of us, it's like game over. Give me that too. And you start spinning. And I mean, I just really have such a strong passion for almost all the crafts. And that's, I guess, another thing to say is that our yarn shop is called a yarn shop, but it's really a sort of diversified source for different crafting materials. And we're not pretending to be sort of this comprehensive yarn shop. There are very good yarn shops in the area, just small distances and far distances away. But we'd like for people to think of this space to be a spot where you can just feel your creativity. If you feel like felting or if you feel like spinning, there is a little bit of something for what you want to craft in that moment.
And how are you finding brands to carry? I know you mentioned, being able to curate carefully and find things that customers are going to demand. So where are you looking? Are you looking on Instagram? Are you do you just know of brands that you've seen at Rhinebeck, or are you traveling to consumer shows or trade shows, or a combination of those sourcing opportunities?
Yeah, so all of those things. The first thing to say is that because I love sheep and wool so much, I wanted to create essentially a festival environment year round. And so a lot of the things that I have, which I have just here, are, hi Brenda. are things that you would find at the Sheep and Wool Festival, like this super good lotion, like this local yarn, which is Jill Draper, and my dog has a Rhinebeck sweater out of Jill Draper's yarn. So a lot of those things came easy. And then sort of the indie dyers. So we have this Birch Hollow, which is a local dyer in the Hudson Valley. And Crafter Gamer Geek, which is an indie dyer also in the Hudson Valley. And then local yarn, which is, for example, Buckwheat Bridge, Angora, which is just 40 minutes away. So the initial emphasis is really on local. And then when you consider sort of what should a yarn store have, if you only sold local, it's not going to be enough, right? So that I'm starting to bring in yarn that rounds out the portfolio. For example, like monos, or from the outset, I had Loopy Mango because they're locally based, even though the yarn is from Italy. So it's really considering the first parameter, what's local, what's high quality, what's really excellent to craft with, and then where are the gaps in sort of the overall portfolio of products, and fill that in. So I'm working, of course, with distributors. I went to my first conference last year. HNH conference was excellent.
Oh, I'm
absolutely
so
phenomenal.
That's great. Yes, I'm so looking forward to it again this year. Yes.
Yeah. And and it also, it's like connecting the dots. So when I was on a work trip, I would say like 6 or 7, actually, I distinctly remember from seeing notes on old yarn. In 2016, I had a visit to Cape Town. So, on a personal trip, I went to find local yarn, and I found Cowgirl Blues, and I knew, okay, when I'm opening my yarn shop, their yarn is going to be in the shop. And I thought I was going to have to manage that remotely, but no, because the owner of the company, Bridget, was actually at the trade show that I just made reference to. So perfect. Yeah, it was really an excellent opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, yarn and fabric and gifts even too, when people are traveling, they want to come into a store, discover something they haven't seen before that's local, that will be a memento from this trip. And a lot of times for most of us, a memento can be supplies, right? So we bought this skein of yarn or this fabric or whatever it might be while we were traveling to this destination. And when we come home and, months or even years later, make something from it, it carries the memory of that place.
Absolutely. I think one of the most satisfying and rewarding and heartwarming experiences is when I have knitters come in, crafters come in who, this is what they do. This is where they spend their money, and they look at what I'm offering for sale and they're delighted. And so that makes me really happy, because I have been one of those knitters that goes into a local yarn shop, and it doesn't matter where it is, but sometimes you're like, oh, I've seen this before. And that's cool. That's cool. It's fine, because you also want sort of the nuts and bolts standard yarn shop where you can go and you can find such and such yarn. But I really am just so delighted and proud myself that people can come in here and find something that really, it's like, oh, I've never heard of that yarn before, or that's interesting. Oh, this feels so nice. So.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I love that idea. As a consumer of craft products, I think that's really, really super. So tell us again where you're located, your exact address, sort of how people can find you, both online too and in person, so that when they're planning their next trip to Kingston, they know where to go.
Absolutely. So the yarn shop name and wine bar name is Yarn Farm Kingston. We're located on the Kingston waterfront. The address is 21 West Strand in Kingston, New York. You can also Google it or use Apple Maps or look on Yelp. The hours are on our website. They're a little mixed because of the wine bar, but we're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. So we're open Wednesdays through Sundays. Okay. The wine bar is open until 7 during the week and until 9 on Fridays and Saturdays. We're on Instagram, Yarn Farm Kingston, and we're on we have a website, Yarn Farm Kingston. So it's all like pretty straightforward. And if you want to send an email, get in touch, just contact us through Instagram or through our or through our email, hello@yarnfarmkingston.com.
That is fabulous. Well, I hope to make it out there. My oldest daughter is an avid knitter, and I have promised her at some point I'm coming to Rhinebeck with her so she can shop and we can enjoy it together. And if we do, I will definitely swing by and say hello. So, and I hope to see you at H&H in the future. And thank you everybody who joined us today for our member spotlight. Thank you so much, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.